Welcome, everyone, to a March Madness NCAA.com chat. I'm Andy Katz, pleased to be joined by NCAA Senior Vice President of Basketball, all things basketball, Dan Gavitt, joining me from Indianapolis after the conclusion of a committee meeting. And Dan, it's crazy to think it was 4 months ago since the NCAA tournament had to be canceled, everything shut down, and we are roughly 4 months from what is right now projected as the beginning of the next season. So if you can, first, give me a status report of where we are in terms of the college basketball season, certainly after this meeting.
Well, Andy, great to be with you. We had really good meetings with the men's basketball committee, of course, virtually. Ironically, we would have been scheduled to be in Orlando, Florida, where the NBA is getting ready to restart their season, but we're doing all meetings now at the NCAA virtually. So we had 3 really good days of committee meetings, planning for the 2021 championship. And, we have great confidence that while things may be different with this season and with the tournament, that we're going to be able to do it in a very safe and responsible manner. If there's basketball being played safely anywhere in 2021, we're going to have March Madness, but doing it in a very safe and responsible way, making sure that it's a healthy environment for student athletes, for coaches, for fans, and for media.
All right, so let's go over a couple issues that have happened over the last week or so. First off, you spoke with SI.com and Pat Forty about a recommendation of possibly starting the season earlier to allow some flexibility at the beginning of the season. Where does that stand?
Yeah, that idea and concept was developed by me and others about a month ago in early June, and we floated it through the membership a little bit with conference commissioners and the like to see if there was utility in providing more flexibility with the start of the season in light of the fact that academic calendars have changed and with the protocol around COVID-19. Of course, in the last month, an awful lot has changed in our country, unfortunately, for the worse, with COVID-19. So that idea, I think, doesn't have nearly the usefulness that we thought it might a month ago. I don't see that happening at all. I think that the season still is scheduled to start on November 10th, and I think that's what's being planned. But there will be obviously ongoing conversations about contingencies should the virus take us in a different direction. I think one of the things that we've all learned in 4 months is that we don't control the virus. The virus controls us, and that we need to be very patient to see how things evolve over time, and then be very flexible and nimble when the time when it warrants it.
So the Ivy League made an announcement that they're not going to have any fall sports. Still a little unclear as to whether or not basketball could play before January 1, but let's work under the assumption that no one at an Ivy League could play before January 1. So they either have no non-conference or limited non-conference or mostly only Ivy League games, and other leagues could also do that. If that does happen, where some leagues only play conference games, how would that affect their entrance into the NCAA tournament in terms of an automatic qualifier or possibly getting it at large?
Well, the basketball committee spent considerable time the last 3 days talking about scenarios like you just posed, Andy, understanding that there may be very different scenarios between conferences and individual teams, with number of games played, with when the season for certain teams and conferences might start and or be interrupted. So we spent time on 2 things. One is that we're going to be very flexible with the automatic qualifier status of each league. So going all the way into probably February, allowing for conferences to change their automatic qualifier determination if necessary, in order to be very flexible and work closely with our conferences. And 2, around our metric, the NCAA evaluation tool and other metrics. We've been working with Google, who helped develop the net for us, to see what would it mean if there were no non-conference games, if there were fewer non-conference games, conference-only games. How would that impact the net and other analytic tools that the committee uses? And frankly, it would pose a problem. There are, with fewer number of games, particularly if there's not cross-pollination of games with non-conference games at some level, the efficacy of the net and other metrics would be challenged. And it may be that the committee, has to just do more work in observing games and using more, qualitative evaluation of teams than the quantitative that we've relied on.
In terms of if it ends up being conference only, and we're seeing that now with the announcement on Thursday from the Big Ten. If we get to that point, and leagues decide, you know what, we're only going to do conference games, we're going to maybe extend them, maybe it's 22, 20, if they're not playing already 20, and maybe they start later. What does that end up doing with the set dates of the postseason?
Well, right now we're definitely still planning on holding the tournament as scheduled with the dates and venues and hosts that we have in place. That is absolutely our preference, and that's where our planning is going. But, we're going to obviously continue to monitor and assess what's going on around the country. We're not going to be irresponsible in that way. We have the advantage of having an awful lot to learn here in the coming weeks and months as Major League Baseball and the NBA and NFL start their seasons, of course, college football as well. And we will be flexible and nimble as necessary if it's warranted by what's going on in our country. But right now, our plans are, to hold the tournament with the same dates we have in place. And some of the contingency planning we've started to do, as I mentioned, is social distancing, of course, reduced capacity, things that we are pretty certain will be in place even 8 months from now when the tournament is set to tip off. But we will do some other contingency planning as necessary. But it's premature to be going too far ahead. We have to be patient. We have a lot to learn still, and fortunately have the benefit of time on our side.
The timing of this one in 21 being in Indianapolis, it happens at least, at a minimum every 4 years. Having the NCAA staff in Indy, how fortuitous is that for all the seasons for this to happen, it's this coming season where there's gonna be a lot of challenges, but the staff actually lives there.
Yeah, I think it's a benefit, Andy. It's a really good point. We know our hosts here so well, IUPUI and the Horizon League. We obviously know the folks at Lucas Oil Stadium and at the convention center and all the hotels. I mean, all the things we need all the relationships we need in order to put on a great Final Four event. We have those deep relationships here, and we've got great experience here. We're here in 2015, as you know, and have had the Final Four here as much as anywhere. So it is of great benefit, and frankly, it's also from a planning perspective more efficient and cost-effective, also without having to travel. So we do have a high level of confidence. It is just coincidental, but and we also have the NBA All-Star Game here in February of 2021. So I know the community will be very well prepared and supports the Final Four like no other.
Well, Dan, obviously, I love the optimism. I hope it all is going to happen, as you said. And I'm just curious, as we're seeing these deadlines for football, where this mid-July making these statements about hopefully of when they're going to start, in September. When do you think, just ballpark, you think some decisions will be made by these conferences about when the season would start if it doesn't start on November 10th? What month are we talking about when you think a decision like that would have to be made?
Well, I mean, I think you have a decent example of what's going on right now with planning for fall and football and other fall sports. The Big Ten announcement, as you mentioned, Andy, today, basically 2 months before the start of their season in early September. So I think that gives you a pretty good indication that we still have some time here, with the start of basketball, 4 months away in November 10th. We have some time to see how things go. And if there's an adjustment that needs to be made, I'm sure the conferences are focused on that. We're supporting them in that effort. But we remain hopeful, and, we'll plan as necessary to be flexible and to be nimble and adjust as the virus, requires us to do.
Bottom line is you plan on making sure, unless something changes, that there will be an NCAA tournament in 2021.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, if there's safe basketball being played anywhere in 2021, there will be an NCAA basketball tournament. And I'm confident that is going to be the case. Of course, we can use some good fortune from the medical community, and I know they're working their tails off to make that happen. And but we want to be able to do that, but only in a safe and responsible manner. And I've got high confidence that is going to happen.